All right, welcome everybody. It is 8 o'clock and it is time to kick off Maximize Your Ministry. I'm Brandon Pardekooper. I am the ministry mentor, and I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight. Those of you who have been here for the last session on Tuesday night, I'm glad you're back. And those of you who are new, I want to welcome you for just this quick, about 45 minutes to an hour of just we're going to teach, and we're going to take some Q&A and try and answer your questions and try and prepare you and equip you to maximize your ministry in 2019. And so again, just welcome. I want to invite you to let any friends you know, any other ministry leaders out there that you know, invite them to join us. It's still not too late. They can still come be a part. If they just go to university.moderninklings.com, or they can go to YouTube and they can search for ministry, maximize your ministry on YouTube, and join us. If you are on the course, if you're in the university.moderninklings.com course currently, why don't you go ahead and click the link there at the bottom. It'll kick you on over to YouTube, and there you'll be able to leave questions and comments and everything else as we go through tonight. Now, we're trying a little bit of a different format. I wasn't super happy with the last session, so I'm trying a new format tonight. And so I don't have everything right in front of me as readily as available as I did before. So the chat feature I won't be able to pay attention to during the presentation, but as we get to the end, I will click on over there to the discussion, to the chat area, and I will look at the questions and answer any questions that I didn't answer through the course of the presentation tonight. And so I also want to encourage you, we are getting ready to launch the Ministry Lab. And so if you have any questions about that or interested in that, you can find that also at university.moderninklings.com. It's going to be, we're launching it for a beta audience. And so if you want to be on the ground level of the Ministry Lab, you'll be able to do that, be a part of the beta group that kind of starts it off. It's going to be a $19.99 a month subscription, and that will be your subscription fee for you as long as you want to have it. So as long as you stay a member in the Ministry Lab, you will keep that $19.99 even as we increase the prices over time as we kind of get more figured out and understand more what we're doing. But if you join us as part of the beta group, you're able to help us build it out, able to help us add some value there, and even let us know what sort of workshops and courses would you like to have that we can build out and create for you. And so I want to encourage you to consider that, to check it out, to jump on over there, and we're going to be launching that in the next couple weeks. And so I'm super excited about that. It's been a long time coming. It's been something that I have thought of and dreamed of, and we've been working on it for quite a while. And so I'm just looking forward to putting it live, getting it out there, and helping ministry leaders like you grow your ministries, grow your leadership, become more effective, and just get more tools in your hands. And that's really what tonight's about. Tonight is about trying to get tools in your hands so that you can go further in your ministry, impact more people, advance the kingdom of God, and quite honestly, so that you can have more time for you, for your family, and for the things that maybe get pushed out because of ministry. It was one of my goals as I coach and as I consult ministry leaders. I try to teach them and equip them and give them the ability to have more of their personal time so that ministry doesn't run them over. And quite honestly, so that they have a longevity in ministry. Ministry is a marathon. And for those of you who are with us tonight, you know that. You know that ministry is a marathon. You know that it takes a lot. One of my goals is to give more free time, give more downtime, give more time to think, more time to read, more time to do recreational things, more time with family, more time with friends. For those of you who love it, for more time to go golfing, whatever the case is. I just want to give you more time and increase your ministry effectiveness, increase your leadership, increase your significance, and increase your advancement of the kingdom of God at the same time. I personally don't believe, after 20 years of ministry, that you have to sacrifice all of your personal time in order to have a successful ministry. I think you can have a successful ministry while at the same time living a healthy lifestyle. And I think it's just a matter of being equipped, figuring it out, and dedicating yourself to it. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And so I am going to pray real quick, and then we are going to get started. Lord God, we thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, to spend time together. And I pray, God, that you will be with us. I pray these next few moments that you will open our hearts and our minds. I pray that you will help me to get out of the way, that you will speak through me. God, that you will take the things that you've given me to prepare or to present tonight, you will take those and you will put it in the hands of these ministry leaders. And they'll be able to apply it. They'll be able to see some significant advancement and changes in their own ministries and their own personal lives. And God, I just thank you. I thank you for your love. I thank you for your grace. I thank you for your provision. And I pray that tonight, that you will use tonight to advance your kingdom and to challenge and grow us. And we thank you and we praise you in your name. Amen. All righty. I'm going to take my glasses off because it appears that they are glaring off the lights. All right. So when I was first starting out in ministry 20 some years ago, I remember hearing John Maxwell say, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I think that most of us would agree with that. Most of us who have been in ministry, who have been in any sort of leadership at all, you've seen that play out. I know I have. I know that I've seen the truth behind that. And so everything rises and falls on leadership. And so we put that in the context of our churches and our ministries. Everything rises and falls on leadership. So everything rises and falls in our ministries and our churches based on us. Now, obviously, God is a huge part of that, and God can move despite us. God can move regardless of our shortcomings and our inabilities and all those things. But sometimes I feel like we use that as almost a badge of honor. We say, well, God can move despite me. And almost like, I don't have to be as good as I need to be. I don't have to be my best because God can move otherwise. But I believe that God puts you in your position, puts me in the position I'm in, puts all of us in our positions, not so that he can move despite us. He puts us in those positions so that he can move through the giftings and talents and strengths and abilities that he has given us and wants to use through us. And so what that means is that I believe that we need to increase our ability to be leaders, increase our skill sets, increase our capacity, increase just who we are as leaders, so that God doesn't have to move in spite of us, that God can move through everything he's equipped us with. And I believe that when that is happening, when we're operating at our peak performance and God is moving through us and we're listening to him and the Holy Spirit is impacting people, that's when great things happen. That's when truly amazing supernatural things begin to happen, because we are in alignment with God and God is moving through everything he's gifted us to do. And so that's what we want to talk about tonight. Is we want to talk about how to maximize your leadership. Now, there are a million different resources out there on leadership. I have a master's degree, a doctorate degree. I've been through a ton of leadership material over the course of my life, and there's still a ton out there that I haven't read. And so what I found is, and I'm sure you found this, is that sometimes you get competing information, you get contradictory information, you get information that's way outside what you're capable of doing or even what makes sense. I understand all of that. What I want to encourage you to do, first and foremost tonight, is number one, just position yourself as a learner. In order to maximize your leadership, you have to position yourself as a learner. You have to get in the mindset that you are willing to learn. And part of that means that not that you're willing to learn from anyone and from anyone and anything, not that you're just going to take everything and not process it. Part of being a learner is taking it in, processing it through, and kicking out what doesn't make sense, kicking out what doesn't line up with Scripture. Even as you're leading some or reading some of these leadership books, they come from an organizational mindset, they come from a business perspective, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's bad, but there are things that apply differently in an organization than they do in a church. And so as a learner, you have to process through that. You have to think through the pieces and the bits of that and choose the good stuff and throw out the stuff that maybe doesn't apply. It may not necessarily be bad, it may just not apply. And so I want to encourage you to position yourself as a learner. And so that means several different things. Now, I've always been told from the very beginning of my ministry that leaders are readers. Now, that doesn't mean that all readers are leaders, and there are positional leaders out there that aren't readers. But truly great leaders are readers. They devour books, they process information, They sit down and make reading a priority. And so I want to encourage you that you need to assess where you are in your reading. Are you reading a book a month, a book a week, a book every 6 months, a book a year? If you're reading a book a year or a book every 6 months, you probably need to step that up. You probably need to dive into that a little bit more. Set a goal. Maybe you want to read 10 books in a year or 5 books in a year or something like that. But I would set a goal and really dive into reading. It doesn't it doesn't mean you have to read through every book. I know for myself, and you can even see behind me, I have a stack of books. I haven't read through all of them. There are books that I've read through parts of them. There are some books that I use more as a reference sort of material. There are books that that I got into and they were good, and then they just came to a point where they were not really applicable to where I was or what I was doing. Some of the business books, they just didn't apply, and so I'm not saying that you have to be tied to reading a book through every time, because if you find that it's just not applicable or it's not engaging enough or you can't use it, or maybe it's contradictory to scripture or something like that, put it aside and move to another book. But the point is that you are reading. The point is that you are putting in the effort to read, putting in the effort to input information. I know for myself that there have been times in my life where I'm not reading consistently, and what happens is that I find that I start to run dry. You ever hear the explanation as to why the Dead Sea is called the Dead Sea, or why it is the Dead Sea? Well, the Dead Sea lies at a lower elevation than everything around it. And so what happens is that all of the water flows into the Dead Sea, but nothing flows out. Nothing goes out. And so what happens is that the water begins to stagnate and the water begins to sit still, and the water just it becomes useless water. Well, as we are taking stuff in, we also have to process through what are we taking in, because if we're truly growing in our leadership, we're truly being used by God, then there has to be an outflow. There has to be an outflow. There has to be somewhere where we're taking that, somewhere where it's going, someone we're impacting. But that means that we also then need to have an inflow. Otherwise, the opposite will happen to us, where all of our water will flow out and we'll have nothing left. And then we'll be living off of things we remember. We'll be living off of old sayings that we had. We'll be living off past experiences, past achievements, past victories. We won't have anything fresh or anything new. And the people that follow us, they know that. People, I know people may not remember your sermon on Tuesday that you preached on Sunday, but I guarantee you they will remember certain phrases, certain stories, certain things that you've said over and over and over again. And if you say them over and over and over again, then your people begin to tune you out, because you don't have any fresh information you're giving them. You don't have anything new that you're challenging with. And at the same time, going back to what we were talking about earlier, if you're reading on a constant basis and you're constantly putting things into your mind, then what happens is that God then has more that he can pull out, more that he can use, more that he can draw into your sermons, draw into your counseling sessions, draw into your vision casting, draw into every aspect of your leadership, because you just have more inside of you. Now, I hear people, they tell me all the time, I just don't have time to read. And I understand that, 100% understand that. I would encourage you, find another way. Maybe it's audiobooks. I know for myself, I found that I have a lot of dead time here and there. I have dead time mowing the yard. I have dead time when I drive. I have dead time throughout my days. And so what I'll do is I'll just listen to an audiobook, whether it's one that I've downloaded. My library has a free audiobook element that I can use. So I would encourage you to check into that. Audible obviously has great audiobooks that you can listen to, but the point is that you are putting things into your mind, growing, learning. Another thing that I would encourage you to do is look at podcasts. There are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of podcasts that are out there. Many of you are taking your sermons and you're putting it on a podcast, and so listen to each other's sermons, listen to each other's preaching style, listen to each other's content. All of that is good, useful information that you can draw from and use to lead others and to develop yourself and to grow your abilities and grow your understanding and challenge your thinking. And so I want to encourage you to somehow find an inflow of information. Reading is great, and reading is probably the primary. But if it's not reading, use audiobooks, use podcasts, uh, read articles, read the paper, read things on a regular basis, and read a broad spectrum of things. Um, I hear a lot of people say that you know that they want to be able to hold a conversation with lots of different people. Well, the key to doing that is being able to talk about a lot of different subjects. And so that means that you have to read, or you have to learn, you have to be an intaker of information. You almost have to be an information maven on lots of different topics so that you can talk about other things. Because as ministry leaders, we can't afford to only talk about ourselves or only talk about the things that we're interested in. If we do that, then what happens is then we lose interest, or other people feel that we lose interest in them. They feel like we're constantly talking about ourselves. We're constantly steering the conversation back around to where we are, or who we are, or what we're interested in, or what's going on in our lives. We're not asking questions about them because we don't have the ability to talk about the things they're interested in. So, and I want to encourage you to be an information maven and draw information into you from lots of different areas, lots of different topics, lots of different subjects, so that you can be a great conversationalist regardless of what anybody talks about. You can talk intelligently, or at the very least, you can ask intelligent questions uh, based on what the subjects are. And so I want to encourage you to draw in your ability to engage people and to uh, have a conversation with them, because you have a wide, broad understanding of multiple topics. And so, so be a learner. I'm gonna take a drink. I'm battling a cold tonight, and so please bear with me. If you're positioned as a learner, if you take the stance of a learner, if you say, I'm going to be a learner, and I am not ashamed of that, and I'm public about it, and you have a wide variety of topics that you can then talk about and draw into your sermons, what will happen is that your congregation will also become learners. They will see the example that you set. Your staff will see that example. Your team will see that example. And what will happen is they will become learners themselves. You will draw other learners towards you. And so your people in the ideal world, when they leave on Sunday morning and start their week on Monday morning, they will remember what you said on Sunday morning, because they are learners, because they're taking notes, because they're ingesting the information, they're processing through it, they're seeing how they can apply it. We get frustrated a lot of times with our congregations and the people that we lead, because we want them to learn faster, we want them to grow quicker, we want them to take the things that we teach them and actually apply them. And what happens is we see them, they run the same cycles over and over again, and they do the same things over and over again, and you say, well, what is happening? We've been preaching about this. We've talked about it. I've been telling you what exactly you should be doing. We've been touching on it over and over on sermons. What's going on? Well, probably what's happening is they're just not positioning themselves as learners. They're not walking into your sanctuary and listening to you with a learner ear. If you're a learner, then you will attract learners to you, which means that the people in your congregation will begin to learn faster because they're positioning themselves to learn. Their ears are open, their hearts are open, they're taking notes, they're ingesting the information, and then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, through the rest of their week, they're applying what you're teaching them to their lives because they're positioned as a learner. People who aren't learners are people who just take. They just take it and take it and take it, but never really do anything with it. And you want people who will do something with what you're teaching them. And so position yourself to be a learner. Hold classes, and hold good classes that teach, good classes that go deep into scripture, that go deep into life skills, that go deep into tools and tips that people can take away and apply to their lives. If you position yourself as a learner and you do that, and you create environments and you create opportunities where others can do that, then your church, your congregation, your faith community, they will start to see greater things happening. Because the more we know and the more we understand and the more we have at our disposal, the more God can use, the more God can move in what he has given us and what we've taken in and what we've processed. And so that's our first tip for tonight. Be a learner. The second one is a little bit more in depth, and that is in 2019, I want you to set a goal to mentor more people. Mentor more people. As a ministry leader, you are called to equip God's people to advance the kingdom of God. That's actually one of our primary directives as a ministry leader, to equip God's people. Or in Scripture it says, equip the saints. And those who follow you are looking to be equipped. They're looking to grow. They're looking to be developed. But that has to move past just preaching good sermons. We all know, I would imagine if you've been a ministry leader for any amount of time, you know that Sunday morning is not the best place for people to really grow deeply. And so if your congregation only has a Sunday morning service, then what that means is that your growth within the church congregation is going to be capped, because you can't grow deep in a Sunday morning setting. It's just not possible. You have too wide of a gap to cover. You have people who are newly coming and visiting your church, and many of them may not even be saved, all the way to people who have been serving the Lord for years and years and even decades. You can't teach that wide of a group of people to go deep in a 30 to 45 minute sermon, or even an hour and a half sermon if that's where you are. You just can't. It's just not possible. And so you need other opportunities outside of the Sunday morning to grow and develop people. Now, if you have a Sunday school class, you have life groups, or you have cell groups, or some other format where people grow, that's great. It's a huge step forward. But the reality is that for you as a ministry leader, like I said at the very beginning, one of my goals is that you have more time for you. More time in your personal life, more time for your family, more time to focus on the things that you really should be doing, things you really need to be doing. Last session we talked about doing only the things that you can do and delegating out to others. Well, that's where this comes in. If you are not mentoring others, and if you're not able to mentor others, that means that you have a cap on your effectiveness, because there is no outflow of your skills and abilities, because you're not mentoring others to do it. And what will happen is if you're not mentoring people into responsibilities, you're not mentoring them in their skills, you're not mentoring them in what you're asking them to do, then they grow frustrated. You grow frustrated because they're frustrated, and their performance drops, and you grow frustrated because their performance drops, and then things go undone. And then what happens is most likely at some point those people will leave, because you weren't able to invest into them the way they were looking. You gave them a responsibility that maybe they kind of understood but didn't fully understand. And then what happened is their frustration and your frustration just led to a break in the process, and sometimes it leads to them leaving. Now, I know you don't want that. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for them. And so I want to encourage you to begin to mentor. And so we're going to go through the phases of a mentorship process. We're going to go through them relatively quickly. There's lots of details inside of this, but I want to at least give you an overview so you can start thinking about it as you're closing out 2018, begin to look at 2019. You can start thinking through what you can do to mentor other people in your congregation, whether it's on staff, your volunteers, or just other people that aren't even stepping up to the plate yet. How can you mentor them to find significance for themselves, as well as take things off your plate and increase your time and your effectiveness? So the first step, or the first phase one in the mentorship process, is establish self-awareness. Establish self-awareness. In order to establish the self-awareness of your mentee, there are two perspectives they have to have. The first one is the current reality of their situation. They have to have an understanding of their current reality. Because if they have an understanding of their current reality and an accurate, objective understanding of their current reality, that means that the whole mentoring process now has grounding to move from. It's grounded in reality. It's grounded in facts. It's not grounded in this feeling or this abstract idea. Because when you start a mentoring process with someone, They're somewhere. They are physically in a place, whether it's whether they're young and looking to grow into ministry, whether they are volunteering in your church, maybe they're leading the ushers and they're wanting to go deeper. Whatever the case is, they have a realistic place that you can start from. It has nothing to do with how they feel. It has nothing to do with your own feelings about them. It has to do with what they're currently doing, where they're currently at in their stage of life, in their volunteer, whatever. They have a set place. And so what this does is it helps avoid idealism in the assessment process. And it pushes it to a reality perspective. And so that's the first one. So the first perspective that you have is the current reality of their situation. The second perspective that they need to have is their preferred reality. Now, this is the place where feelings and ideas and vision and abstract, this is where all this comes in. Because you're looking out ahead, you're looking into the future. Okay, where are they going? Where do they want to be? Their preferred reality provides them with something to aim at. Sometimes they may not be able to articulate that. I know for myself, I've mentored hundreds, especially college students, young adults. And a lot of times they struggle. They struggle with being able to articulate exactly what that preferred reality is. Or it's so vague and so grandiose, 30,000 feet level, that they don't really have a great grasp on it. And so this is where our job is to ask good questions, so where we coach them. We ask questions, we listen, we actively process through what they're saying, and we help them formulate what is it that they're aiming at. What is that perspective, their preferred reality? Because when we have their preferred reality and when we have their current reality, and we have those two pieces, and they're clear and they're understood and they're agreed upon, then what happens is we now have 2 points to process through in the mentorship relationship. So that then leads us to phase 2. Phase 2 is gap identification. Gap identification. So the 2 perspectives that we talked about in phase 1, they provide 2 points on the journey. Starting point, end point. Current reality, preferred reality. When we have these 2 points, we now have, think of it as 2 ends of a bridge. We have this end, and now we're going to build a bridge to cross over. And so we have our starting points, and now we have to figure out what do we have so far in the bridge. And so how do we identify? What do we need to identify in the gap? So the first thing that we need to do, step 1 in gap identification, is to determine what the mentee brings to the table already. What experiences do they have? What gifts do they have? What unrefined skills do they have? What are they naturally good at? What talents do they have? What strengths do they have? What do they bring to the table that's going to help them on their journey? I know for myself, again, as I mentored a lot of young college students going into ministry, a lot of them had very natural speaking ability. And so I knew if their end goal, their preferred reality was to be in some sort of leadership, ministry leadership position, well, their natural speaking ability already meant that I didn't have to go through the basics of speaking because they already had that. I just had to figure out how to build off of it. Or, there were some who were naturally good at details and putting events together and processing through taking the abstract and putting detail to it. And so when I understood where they were already starting at, then I knew what ground didn't need to be covered, and I knew where we could then begin in the process. And so step 1 is determine what the mentee brings to the table. How much of the bridge is already built? Step 2 then is, what does the mentee lack? What needs to be developed in order to accomplish their desired reality? So we know what they bring to the table. And when we look from the starting point to the end point, their current reality to preferred reality, what are they missing? What pieces of the bridge are completely gone, not even built yet? Because those are the pieces that we then focus our mentorship on. So let's put it in the context of maybe where you're at. Let's say that you are a lead pastor and you're wanting to bring somebody on to lead a small group system. You're wanting to launch small groups. You need to bring on a leader to lead your small group system. And so you need to mentor them into the ability to manage multiple leaders, multiple small groups. And so let's say that they already have natural relationship skills. They're good at engaging with people. They're good at shaking hands and giving hugs and asking good questions and listening. They already have kind of the relational skills down. And so so that's step one. That's the part of the bridge that's already built. But maybe the organizational skills are just completely missing. Maybe they're just not able to put any structure to anything. And so you know that if they're going to run a ministry within your church, or they're going to run a small group system, they need to be able to somewhat manage the details. And so that's the part of the bridge that's not built at all. And so step one is determine what the mentee brings to the table. Step two, what are they missing? And then step three is one that often gets forgotten. But at step three, you determine, if anything, what does the mentee need to get rid of that's detrimental to them. And so, for instance, let's go back to the small group leader. Maybe you have somebody who you want to put in a position to lead your small group system. They're great relationally, they connect with people really well. Maybe they're struggling a little bit on the detail side, the structure side, and the system side. But then let's say that they have an explosive, they get explosively angry when challenged, or maybe they fly off at the handle, or get embarrassed when they don't have the answers to the questions. Well, that's something they need to get rid of, because if they're going to lead people, as you know and I know, if they're going to lead people, there's going to be times when they just don't have the answer, or there are going to be times where somebody's going to challenge them, or somebody's going to push their buttons, and they can't fly off of the handle at those times. And so you know and I know that that's probably something that's going to be detrimental to them. So as we're building this bridge, we need to take that piece of the bridge out and get rid of it. We're not keeping it. We're not allowing it to stay, because we know that if we build the bridge and it stays there, at some point that is going to blow the whole bridge up. And then that's a mess that you have to clean up. That's a mess that I have to clean up, because we didn't take the time to develop them properly and take that piece out of the bridge. And so step one, determine what the mentee brings to the table. Step two, determine what they need, and then, or what they lack. And then step three, determine what the mentee needs to get rid of that may be detrimental to them. Now, once these elements are assessed and determined, then you have a clear picture for you and the mentee of how to get from their current reality to their preferred reality. So that moves us then into phase three. Phase three is observational training. Observational training. Now, I don't know about you. I know for myself, I had lots of mentors along the way. Now, I had some really good mentors, and I had some mentors that were okay. I had some mentors that they simply allowed me to just watch them. They would go do things, and they would say, "Hey, come watch how I do this," and I would go and I would watch, and that was kind of the end of it. You know, there wasn't really a debrief. There wasn't any questions. It was just kind of like, "Hey, I'm really good at this thing, and so you want to learn how to do it, so come watch me do it. Take notes, learn from me." Now, that is a form of mentorship. It's not a great form, because I know from my own experience mentoring others, and then I've also my own experience being mentored, there were things that I observed that I processed completely wrong. There have been things that I have done that somebody has observed from me, and they apply it completely wrong. And so observational training goes beyond just watching and then going off and figuring it out on your own. What observational training is it starts with, "Hey, you come watch me do this. I'm going to go do this, and I want you to watch me." So in our context, a lot of times I'll talk about speaking, being a public speaker, preaching, teaching, something like that. Come and watch how I do it. Come watch me prepare. Come watch me present from the stage. Watch me go through my process and observe what I do. And so that's kind of the first thing. They go through that observational process. They watch what you're doing. They take notes. They kind of see the nuances of the things that you do. But it doesn't stop there, because then on the back end of that, there's a Q&A, there's a debrief session, because that's where they begin to ask questions. So I saw you do this. Now, what did that mean? Or I saw you do this. Is that exactly how you were seeing it? Or so and so, this happened in the congregation and you responded this way. Why did you respond that way? The Q&A section, the debrief session, is actually where the growth happens. Because when they observe what you're doing, that's great, but there's no understanding behind it. It's just watching something and then putting it down, maybe on paper or remembering. But when they ask you questions, and they're allowed to ask you questions, and quite honestly, when they're allowed to even challenge you a little bit, and you respond with grace, and you respond with strength, and you teach, what that does is it allows them to not just learn what they see, but it helps them understand what they're seeing and apply it to their own lives, apply it to their own skill set. And so that's the first step. And that step will happen a few times. Observe, debrief, and it'll happen in multiple areas of ministry. So again, let's go back to the small group leader that you're wanting to put in place. So maybe they're struggling a little bit on the structure piece. And so you have them observe how you do a meeting with your leaders. Maybe it's your staff, maybe it's a group of volunteers, but let them watch you, how you meet with them, how you handle the structure parts of a ministry, the structure parts of what you do. We'll let them observe that and then debrief with them so that they can then ask questions and grow their understanding beyond just seeing. And you do that multiple times. Observe, debrief, observe, debrief, observe, debrief. Now, the next step in the process is then going to, okay, they've observed and debriefed multiple times. Now, they're going to go and do it. You're going to observe and then debrief. So you've equipped them, they've watched you, you've taught them, you showed them how to do it along the way. And then now they're going to go and they're going to do it. Now, what that means is that you've gone through the process of teaching them the skill set or teaching them whatever it is that they need to know in order to do it. So if we go back to the preaching example, they've observed and you've debriefed with them. Observe, debrief. And you've taught them along the way how to structure a sermon. You've taught them along the way how to stand on the stage and how to manage the pulpit and manage their notes. You've taught them the little nuances and the little details that maybe nobody ever notices, but that makes your process very unique, and little tips and tricks that you've learned along the way that helps them maybe grow a little faster than what you did, because you're taking more information and giving it to them. You're teaching them the inside details. And so you've taught them along the way. They've observed and debriefed, observed and debriefed. You've given them skill sets and training and all that along the way. Now it's time for them to go do it. And maybe you do it, maybe you do a tag team with them. So you do a sermon and they do one point of the sermon, or in a 30-minute sermon, maybe they do a 5-minute piece of it or something along those lines. Or maybe they go speak for you on a Sunday morning, or they speak in a class, or they speak in some other context. But they go and they do it, and you observe. Now, this is key, because sometimes when we're in this training mode, we train them to do something and then we go send them to do it and we don't watch. We don't pay attention. We don't go with them because we just don't have time. We don't have the energy, or we can't fit it into our schedule. But here's the thing. If you take the time to go and watch and observe, there are two things that are going to happen. Number one, you're going to know exactly what's going on and how to better train them. But number two, you are communicating to them a huge level of value. You're saying your development is important enough to me that I'm going to take time out of my schedule and I'm going to come watch you do it. I'm going to cheer you on. I'm going to stand in your corner. I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to help you get better at your craft. That speaks volumes to them. And quite honestly, as you're training up a leader to follow you, you're training up a leader to be on your team, that deepens their loyalty to you. That deepens their ability to learn from you. And so they've observed and debriefed, observed, debriefed. Now they go and do it. You observe and then debrief. Ask questions. Go deep with them. Ask them why they did certain things. Give them critiques on things that they did, how they can do it better, whatever the case is. But you help them in the debrief time to get a broader understanding of what's going on. And so that's what observational training is. It's a strategic process of passing skills to the mentee, because you can train them or mentor them haphazardly. Here's a skill here, here's a skill here. Oh, you needed to do this before that, but I didn't teach you that, and so kind of have to backtrack and teach this thing before you can do that thing. That just is it slows down the process. It confuses the mentee, and quite honestly, it then begins to eat up more of your time, which I think that a lot of times people don't mentor others because of that aspect. When you create a strategic process for the mentee, something that you understand and something that they understand, then you're able to make sure that you're building on top of it as you go. You're not having to backtrack. You're not having to take steps back. You're not losing time in the process. And they grow faster because it's clearer in their mind as they're learning the skills. And so, what that means then is that you have a strategy to give them, to walk them through the process and to empower them. Controlled empowerment. You give them a little bit, and they go and do it. Give them a little bit more, they go and do it. Give them a little bit more, and they go and do it. You want to set them up with successes, small little wins along the way to keep their confidence growing, keep their confidence building. I see it all the time. Ministry leaders struggle with their confidence because we get criticized in so many different ways from all kinds of angles, and we struggle with confidence. And my guess is most of us didn't start off with a high level of confidence. And so when you're mentoring somebody, start them off. That's one of the greatest gifts you can give them. Start them off with high confidence, not arrogance, but high confidence. Because if they can take that into ministry and take it into a world of criticism, they start off high and they can fend off more of that criticism along the way. If they start low on their confidence level, they're going to get eaten up alive. I know for me, when I went into ministry, I can't tell you how many of my friends were out of ministry in the first couple of years. They just couldn't deal with the constant criticism, and some of them were in really rough situations. And so when you're mentoring somebody and you're equipping somebody, give them high confidence. That's a great gift you can give them, and do that through controlled empowerment. You give them a little task, a little assignment, a little event, a little something that is a high probability they're going to do well, and that increases their confidence. And then you empower them with a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and over time they're going to be running things for you because they've grown into that position or they've grown into the responsibilities. And so controlled empowerment is huge. And so so just make sure that you are doing that you are walking them through the strategic process, and you're guiding them one step at a time so that they can grow into whatever it is you call them to do. And so if you'll do that, if you'll create that strategic process, then you will see huge impact not only in your own ministry day-to-day life, but you'll see it through the course of your whole church and your whole faith community and your whole ministry. Because as you're mentoring and you're equipping and you're giving it off, then that creates momentum. It creates energy. It creates this belief and this high value faith that they're seeing God move in more ways, because you're not the lid that keeps everything down. You're handing off and you're empowering and you're giving abilities and strengths, and you're giving responsibility, and you're giving ministries away to people, and you're letting them run them. Because the church is really about the people. It's not about us as ministry leaders. We're just the stewards of what God has given us. If we're sitting at the top of the church org chart and dictating downward, something is messed up there. We are stewards of what God has given us, and the people, our job is to equip the people to then go advance the kingdom of God. And then the final step, or the final phase in the mentorship process, is to teach them how to mentor as well. Teach them how to do what you just did. Don't take someone through a mentorship process into a ministry position or into some sort of role and then send them out and never teach them how to mentor others. Because if you do that, then that means that mentorship always have to come back to you. You're the bottleneck that mentorship has to run through. Now, if you want to mentor some of your higher level leaders and that all goes through you, that's totally understandable. But most churches of any size at all, you can't mentor everybody. You have to delegate mentorship out. And so when you mentor someone through, the last step in the mentorship process is to teach them how to then mentor others. Because what that does is it creates a culture of mentoring. It creates a culture of leadership. It creates a culture of investing in other people. It creates a culture of serving others. And when we do that, then we have a faith community that looks, I believe, the way God and the way Christ intended it to. Christ mentored his disciples, and he taught them to mentor others. And so when he was gone and they were starting the early church, they mentored others. And so don't mentor somebody without teaching them, following all the way through the phases, teaching them how to mentor other people. And so that's all I have. And so I'm going to jump on over to our chat and see if there are any questions. So one of the questions is how do you, what is it that you should be reading when we go back to being a learner? What is it you should be reading? And again, as I mentioned, read everything that you can read. Do it. Quite honestly, the reality is that there is so much out there to be read, and I think that it's important that you read everything that you can read. Now, what I would say is that a high importance or a high value in that process of reading has got to be theological, has got to be learning some of the pieces that are going to grow your sermons. Your sermons need to be engaging. They need to be educational, but also inspiring. And so the more you read, that's going to grow your sermon development. I would say that's probably priority number one. Read the things that are going to grow that. Read the things that are going to help you in your sermon development, help you bring in more narrative or bring in more ideas or more illustrations. Even for some of us who aren't naturally funny, like myself, maybe pulling some sort of joke book or something that's going to help you lighten up your sermons. I know that there are a lot of corny pastor jokes out there, and probably a lot of them come from those joke books. But if that's not your forte, if that's not what you're naturally good at, then find a resource that's going to help you do that, because it's important. It's important to be able to engage your audience on multiple levels, and one of those levels has to be with humor. And so I want to encourage you to do that. Do it with humor, because nothing lightens up a crowd or wakes them up a little bit than some good laughter. And so I would read anything you can, but definitely focus on the things that are going to help in your sermon development. So another question I get a lot of time when it comes to mentoring is, how do I mentor millennials, or how do I mentor this new generation? Because they know it all already, and they don't have any questions, or they don't have any gaps. Well, the reality is they do. And you know that, you see that. Maybe they don't see it, but you do. You see the gaps. You see maybe what they need to know. What I have observed is that most of the time millennials are not the ones who are adverse to being mentored. A lot of times it's boomers and Xers are adverse to mentoring millennials. And part of that is because you have to mentor them a little bit differently than you were mentored, than I was mentored. They don't know everything. And they know they don't know everything. But at the same time, they also have a inundation of information. So if you're going to mentor by just passing information, that's not going to work, because there is so much information readily available to them. They don't need you to give them more information. They need you to teach them how to use the information. How do you apply it? What do you do with it? How do you put it into action? That's where you need to mentor them. Don't just pass information on, because that's just redundant for them. They know they don't know everything. They also know, though, they have any amount of knowledge that they want to have is right there at their fingertips. They just go to Google or they go to YouTube and and there it is. They don't need you for that. They need you to show them how do you apply it, or what are the little tips and tricks, what are the little nuances, what are the little things that that you learned over with experience that you can then teach them. And so if you're a boomer and an Xer and you're frustrated with mentoring millennials, or you don't even want to try because they don't seem like they're interested, I want to encourage you, mentor them. They want mentors. They just want mentors to understand how to mentor them. Don't give them information, teach them how. We have a question: how do you choose who to use this mentoring process on? As a youth pastor, you want to pour into as many students as possible, but you can't with everyone. This is a great question. There's a couple primary ways I think that people usually rise to the occasion. Number one, you identify people in your congregation, in your church, in your ministry, in your student group, whatever the case is, you identify people that you think that have the ability or the skills or whatever to rise into that leadership position. Now, here's the thing. As leaders, we have a tendency to believe more in people than what they believe in themselves. So that's where we have to be objective in our assessments. Assess what they actually are capable of doing. Don't be idealistic, because if you're idealistic in what they're capable of doing, then what's going to happen is you're going to set them up and put them in something that they're going to fail. You need to learn how to be objective and assess actually where they are, and then can they move into the leadership position you're looking for. And so if you're going that route, if you're identifying people, maybe it's somebody that you connect with, somebody that you like, somebody that maybe is just kind of hanging around, or maybe somebody who seems like they need something to do and you have something they can be doing, that's fine, but you have to assess their capabilities, assess their capacity, assess their leadership skills, assess their strengths. Are they a good fit for the positions? The other way that we kind of rise to the occasion of being mentored is that they're showing you what they are capable of doing. They're already showing you they're interested. They're already, maybe, for if you're a youth pastor, maybe they're already setting up chairs, or maybe they're showing up early or staying late, or they're showing up for events to help out, beforehand or whatever. If they're already doing those things, then they're already showing an interest or an ability to lead. They may not know that's what they're doing. I know for me, when I was starting off so I got saved when I was a freshman in high school. When I was a sophomore in high school, I really kind of started getting into church, and I started attending a lot more, going to youth group, and for me, I just wanted to be at church. I wanted to be around my youth pastor. I wanted to follow him. I wanted to learn what he was doing, and I didn't have any aspiration to go into ministry at that point. I just knew that he had something that I was looking for, and I had time that I wanted to invest in my youth group and my church, and so I was just around. And along the way, he took an interest in me. He saw something in me that I really at the time didn't see in myself. I didn't see myself as a leader at all, certainly. And I didn't see myself going into ministry at any point. And so, but he did. He saw that in me, and he kind of pulled that out. And so a lot of times as leaders, we see something in others that they may not see, but they're already living it out by putting in the effort or showing up or being around or whatever the case is. And if that's true, again, you have to go back to objective assessment of what they're capable of doing at that point. And you move them through a strategic process where they kind of little wins. I know my youth pastor, the first real thing he gave me to do is he gave me an event. It was a camp out for the youth group, and he said, I want you to handle the activities of the camp out. And so, I took it very seriously. It was okay. I need to do a good job, plan it out, every detail, and figure it all out. And now that I look back on it, I realize that if I had failed completely in running the events, it would have been fine. The camp out would have been fine. Everybody had a good time. But he gave me something that was huge to me as a 16 or 17-year-old. It was huge to me to have that responsibility, but it was an easy win because he knew I could do it. And if I didn't do it, that he was there to cover it. His shoulders were broad enough that it would be okay. And so again, going back to making sure that you are making sure that you're being objective in your assessment, and you're giving people the opportunity to build their confidence, to do well, to be successful, And as they build those successes over time, and then you'll start to see, okay, they can do this, they can handle this, and you give them more, and you give them more, and you give them more. And so again, I would caution just grabbing the people you like, because what that will do is it will cause you to overlook people that are, maybe more equipped or more skilled and more able. And so I'm going to challenge you to do that. So I don't see any other questions, and so I'm going to encourage you to just thank you so much for being a part. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that this has been a great opportunity for you. And all right, I think we had a little bit of a glitch there. Kind of lost you guys there. But I think that's it for tonight. We don't have any other questions. And so I want to thank you again for joining us for Maximize Your Ministry Session 3. We're going to kick off again on Sunday. We're going to take a few days off, take the weekend off, let everybody enjoy the weekend. Sunday night, 8 o'clock, we're going to come back and we're going to dive into Maximize Your Health. Maximize Your Health, which is a great topic that everybody loves to talk about. And as we're looking ahead to 2019, looking ahead to maximizing our health in 2019, it's a great time, new year. It's where everybody starts wanting to maximize their health. But I want to give you some tools and some tips to actually do that, to carry out, not just make a resolution to start the new year, but to actually do what you're hoping to do. And so, so join us on Sunday. Again, I want to encourage you, be on the lookout for the Ministry Lab kicking off in a couple weeks. And again, thank you so much for being here. Hope you have a great night, and I will see you all very soon.